This story is called The Old Oak Tree. It did not take long for Steve and Sally Sutcliffe and their children, Leo and Felicity, to settle into their new home. It was such a comfortable, happy place. It felt as if they had lived there forever. What they noticed most was the clean, sweet air, the rustle of leaves, birds singing, and the quiet of nearby lanes and roads. They had left all the noise and horrible smells of London far behind. Of course, there were some things that needed to be changed. Sally Sutcliffe needed a new kitchen because the old one had ancient cupboards and the boiler didn't work very well, and the plumbing made big, horrible, gurgling noises in all the pipes. Outside the house, it was time to decorate all the woodwork because the paint was cracked and peeling. Steve Sutcliffe thought about doing the painting himself, but his job in London kept him very busy, so he decided to get a man to do it. It was just as well, because the man had a long ladder and found there were things on the roof that needed to be mended. Steve would get up very early each morning, eat a bowl full of cornflakes, and have a quick cup of coffee before getting in his car to drive to the station. It only took 5 minutes, and he timed it so well that he just had 2 minutes to spare before his 7 o'clock train arrived. Wife Sally was also busy. She soon got to know lots of people in the village, especially the older ones. Sometimes she would help them to do their shopping, and she even taught some of them how to use complicated things like computers, iPads, and mobile phones. She was very good at that. As for Leo and Felicity, you can imagine the fun they were having in their new home. When they lived in London, they seemed to be stuck indoors every day, but now they spent all their time outside in their huge garden, except, of course, when they had to go to school. They even had some new friends who often came to play. The garden was just perfect for cowboys and Indians, hide and seek, climbing trees, and even doing some pretend fishing in the big pond. But there was a problem, and it was a problem for some very special people I haven't told you about. Hiding in the tall grass, they had anxiously watched when the Sutcliffe family moved into Heatherfield farm. They saw the children playing and hoped so much that they wouldn't come to their part of the garden where the old oak tree stood. They just did not want to be discovered, and now I'm going to tell you why. If you got up very early in the morning when the sun was still looking very sleepy, and then you crept slowly, silently down the garden, across the lawn, past the vegetable plot, the tall grass, the big pond, and then through the orchard, you would see the huge oak tree. It was very old, probably hundreds of years old. It might even have been older than the farmhouse. It had a beautiful shape, with long branches spreading in all directions to create cool, dark shadows on the ground where moss grew and sometimes autumn mushrooms. As soon as you got this far, you would need to lie down amongst the grass and preferably behind a bush so that nobody could see you. It is only then that you might be in for a huge surprise, but to do that you would need to be very, very quiet and to look carefully at the bottom of the oak tree, especially between its large roots. Then suddenly you might see the green moss begin to move a little. Then a black crack would appear and become larger as the moss was gradually pushed to one side. Good heavens, you might gasp. It's a little door. You might wonder what lives there. Is it a mouse? Is it a ferret? Or could it even be a hedgehog? Suddenly the door swings right open, and what do you see? It's a little man. How extraordinary! He can only be as tall as a squirrel, perfectly formed, with dark hair, bright eyes, and a curly black moustache. What is he wearing? At first it's difficult to tell, because the colours of his shirt and trousers are the same colours as the moss and the oak tree. He has rolled up sleeves, revealing very sun-tanned arms, and his long trousers only stretch halfway down his legs. Dear me, it looks as if he's forgotten to put his shoes and socks on. I hope he hasn't seen me. It looks like he has just got out of bed, because, arching his back, he decides to throw both arms in the air, stretching his whole body, as if trying to wake it up. Suddenly a sweet little voice comes from within the oak tree. "Mr. Tiddlewit, please shut that door. I don't want leaves blowing into my nice clean kitchen." "Certainly, Mrs. Tiddlewit. Just having a nice stretch," he replied. Then, after jumping up and down a couple of times on the moss, he turned sharply round, quickly went through the little door, and closed it tightly shut. So now you know, the old oak tree was the special home of the very small Tiddlewits and their family. Mr. and Mrs. Tiddlewit had lived under the old oak tree for as long as they could remember. It was a very peaceful, safe place, because hardly anybody ever came to this part of the garden. Well, that is until the Sutcliffe children, Leo and Felicity, had arrived. The Tiddlewits had 3 children. Seraphine was their 7-year-old daughter. She was a very good girl, helping her mother to do the washing and the cooking, and she always kept their little home spotlessly clean, even when it rained and was muddy outside. Seraphine had 2 brothers. Their names were Pickle and Pumpkin, and both were 5 years old. They were twins, and always up to mischief. Mrs. Tiddlewit and Seraphine spent a lot of time checking on them to make sure they weren't being naughty or doing dangerous things outside. Mrs. Tiddlewit was very clever, because she made clothes for the whole family. She used all the things she found in the garden and the little forest to make them into fine material. She used leaves, feathers, bits of plants, and even cobwebs to make dresses, blouses, skirts, shirts, and trousers. Everybody was very smart, but you would have to look very hard to notice. Why, you might ask? The reason was, all the colours they wore were the same colours as the garden. There is a special word for this. It is called camouflage. Let me explain. If you saw a black and white cow in a green field, you would see her immediately. But if she decided to paint herself the same colour as the grass she was eating, you probably would not notice she was there at all. That's what camouflage is, and the Tiddlewits found it very useful, because they didn't want anyone to know where they were. You can hardly blame them, because for them the Sutcliffe family looked like giants, and giants can be very frightening if you are a very small person. Now there is one thing we have to get absolutely right. If you ask Mr. Tiddlewit if he was an elf or a fairy, he would suddenly get very cross. "I am not an elf or a fairy," he would insist. "I am a person. I am a real person. Just because we are very small doesn't mean to say we are not people." But, having said that, the Tiddlewits were very different and very special. They knew the secrets of the forest and the garden, and could do special things with them that you and I would think were magic. They could understand and talk to animals, birds, and even insects. They would know whether plants and flowers were happy or sad, well or unwell, and if there was anything wrong with them, they knew how to make them better. For this reason, the whole garden and the small forest loved the Tiddlewits, and were only too happy to supply them with all the food and flowers they could ever possibly need. I think it's going to be very interesting finding out about the Tiddlewits. We will see what adventures they get up to, and we will have to walk very carefully so as not to accidentally tread on them.